everybody to the Warrant and Finance Committee meeting for December 20th, 2021. The first thing on the agenda is salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next thing would be to approve the minutes of last meeting.
There's a correction that IC needs to be made. I was not at the last meeting. I was absent.
Neither was I. I was also.
Yeah, got you.
You want that reflected in the minutes?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, because we weren't present. It's saying that we were present.
So yeah, we do.
Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as corrected?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as corrected.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Before we go on, Joe, as we all know, Tom resigned from the Warrant and Finance Committee due to the election. So you'll be moving up as a regular member. Jennifer called me Saturday and said that the selectmen will be making that appointment Wednesday night to move you up, so you'll have to get sworn in again as a regular member. And she has put on the town website, looking for 2 alternate members at this point, and hopefully next week the selectmen will make an appointment, so we'll be back to a full board again. We had requested the summary reports for expense reports through October, and we didn't talk about it much at our last meeting because people wanted a chance to review them and maybe come up with some questions or opinions or whatever you guys wanted to do. So is there any questions about those summary reports? I know it's a lot of pages. If the committee just wanted it just for references, what was the follow-up questions they might have that you might?
I found it a little difficult to follow from one month to the next
Yeah.
as to where things were going. And could just be me, but I did find it difficult to follow through that way. And having some accounting background and some work as a treasurer, I know enough to say I don't know enough to read this properly. So I think as a reference, for me, it's a good thing.
What's your thoughts on it, Ben?
I would say the same. For me, it's a reference, but I don't have any specific comments or questions.
It's a good piece of reference material.
Yep, it's a lot of,
You know, how we're moving forward throughout the year.
I just got it tonight.
All right.
I wasn't here.
How about you, Joe?
I looked through half of the audits.
Yeah.
Are you referring to the,
No, we're returning to the expense reports, Joe, that we got.
on
A monthly, weekly expense reports that Michelle gave us for our last meeting.
oh, yeah. I haven't really had enough time to review.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I was
And
reviewing the other.
I'd like to publicly thank Michelle for printing all that off for us.
Absolutely.
We'd asked, a couple of months ago for the audit report, and we needed to wait until the whole process had been followed through with. And so I asked last week, yeah, it was last week, Jennifer and Michelle, if we could have it for our meeting, this month. And as you can see, we have it. There's a lot of information in there to go over. We can have discussions about it tonight if you want. But I think having a chance to read it and go through it completely would serve the committee better. If going through it between now and when we have our next meeting, if anybody has any follow-up questions they might have for Michelle, please send them to me in an email, and I'll pass them on along through the proper channels. Does this sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Thank you.
I asked also if there was any recommendations that the auditor made on the audit this past year, and I was told that there wasn't. Michelle sent out the email. She said, Jennifer, either one, I can't remember. There wasn't any recommendations for any changes. The other thing that is meeting with department heads. I'm going to give my opinion, and everybody can give their 2 cents worth on it. I would like to, before the budget is finalized by the Board of Selectmen, I would like to be able to have a joint meeting so that everybody can sit down and have a conversation of what the different departments would like to see. And because quite often, I know my experience in the budget process, when I'd create a budget, I'd take it to the powers to be, and then they would end up telling me what I could have to take to town meeting. But I think to understand a little more about where the department heads are coming from, I think it'd be a nice conversation to have, because what's happened in the past few years anyway, is the departments meet with the selectmen and then go over their budgets, and they come up with an agreement of what the budget's going to be, and then we're presented that information when we do our deliberations on the warrant. And I like, in working with the town, I would like to have that conversation before the budgets are finalized.
With whom? For the minutes? You
I would like to
want to have a joint meeting with the department heads? Or
Yes, and the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, I want to get that right.
to have a conversation, it'd be informational. We could ask some questions, we might have something, they might change their mind about doing something, or maybe it's up to the committee, but whatever you guys want to do, but I want to throw that out there and open that conversation up. I mean, this in no way is any meant to be disrespectful to the Board of Selectmen or anybody else, but I think it's to give us a clearer understanding of what these departments are looking at.
Are we asked to take a position on whether the budget should pass or not?
Not at that time.
No, but when it goes before the voters?
Yes.
Does it
Yes.
state our position?
Yes.
Okay. And are we not allowed to attend the meeting when the department heads meet with the Board of the Select Board?
Yes.
We can.
The last few years, they have done it in a workshop in their office.
Okay.
Like
And-
1 week, they would call in, say, the transfer station, and they'd go over their budget, and then another week, they'd call in the fire chief and like that.
We don't attend.
That's the way it's done, but the last few
Are
years.
we allowed to attend?
Oh, yes, they're public meetings.
And can the public ask questions at that point?
My experience has been, when I've gone to them, is we sit there and listen.
Okay. The only reason I ask the question is to try and understand why the separate meeting with the department heads and us and the board, why you would see that as necessary instead of us just attending the meetings that already exist and participating in those.
Because we'd be able to, I would hope, voice our thoughts to the department heads. I mean, I can only talk for myself. I've had a concern for the last couple of years. Rate of pay, for example, that we're paying the fire department. I think that rate of pay is low. We do lose people because of the wages. And I talked to Ricky about it last year, and he agreed with me, but he didn't really think, I shouldn't speak for Ricky, but he didn't really think that asking for what they were asking for last year, that the town could really afford. You remember I spoke about it at town meeting, I wanted to increase the pay. So there's things like that, Bernie, that I would like to be able to say to the fire chief before the budget is finalized by the Board of Selectmen, that myself personally, I would support more money for the wages for the firemen. And once we get the budget in this book, the selectmen can still change something, obviously. But normally, whatever is in this book, when they give it to us during the budget, first part of the budget process, it's very rare that any dollar amounts ever, what the dollars are for, ever change. And I just think working with everybody in general together would just be a positive. I can't see any negative that would come out of it. That's just my feelings, but it's all obviously up to the committee what we do, or what we ask.
I think also too that, and when the budget is being developed, if we have an opportunity to ask questions with both the selectmen and the department heads, I mean, I know I don't have all the answers, and there may be something that I haven't thought of you know, that we may think of, be able to present, that might be germane to finalizing, you know, whatever budget we're talking about. And if we go to the selectmen meeting with them and we're not allowed to ask questions or to participate, those ideas are not going to be brought forward at a time when I find it crucial when you're developing the budget. So I think it would be beneficial.
I mean, obviously, it's something we'd have to ask the Board of Selectmen if they'd be interested or not, and if they're not, then I guess, I mean, that's a decision they make, but we've had quite a few discussions lately, in particular you, Bernie, one of them, working together and everybody sitting down and having a conversation, so everybody has a clear understanding of where everybody's coming from.
Right, well, that was part of why I asked the question I did about whether there needed to be a change in forum in order to ask a question or to participate.
I mean, I guess David, if he wanted to, could answer that. Usually, I mean, people that go to it, they sit there and they just listen to what's being said.
But is that because they can't or because they don't?
Well, typically what we do is we do a workshop with the individuals and department heads, and we try to keep it within the selectmen and department heads, and still believe that you don't want to turn into a big selectmen's meeting or a big finance meeting. All we're asking from them is typically, you know, when they first submit their budget, we in our last couple of years, we've told them, submit what you think you need. You know, and we try to be conservative, you know, we don't want people just coming in and saying, I want $1 million or whatever, you know, we just, what you think you need to operate. And typically, you know, they'll come in and, years ago, you know, we were always told flat line, and I think we've done a pretty good job the last couple of years saying, you submit what you think you need to do your job. And at that point, you know, we'll get it. If it's way out of whack, you know, we'll try to contact the department and say, you know, we really haven't had that issue, maybe once, but typically, what we try to put forward, the budget they ask for, to you guys on that Saturday meeting where we all meet, then that's where the questions are asked. And I don't believe at that time, we don't finalize anything until after that meeting anyway, so you really already have in that meeting. The only thing is, I've had discussions, I do believe that, I do believe the Saturday meetings that we have a little shorter than they should be. I think we may want to extend those, because, you know, you give 15 minutes to a road commissioner, you know, or 2 road commissioners, you know, it's not enough time, there's never enough time. And the fire department, same thing. Transfer station usually, I don't know this year, but usually is short session because their budget was always so confined. It was always pretty easy to read. There was never usually any huge increases. But I feel the way we do it right now works. I just feel that maybe the Saturday that we meet with all the department heads, we could extend some time. And I think that's something I'm going to suggest there shortly. So.
Thank you.
So like I said, it's whatever the committee, whatever approach the committee decides they want to take.
I think if we know what because we do recommend or don't recommend. So if we know what was asked for and we know what is, and I mean, I've got some budgets for a few years, and it's just like David says. I mean, if we've gone up 1 or 2% over the last few years, I think that's all it's all been right in that range, it's all been,
And we have had, like last year, there was some really large increases in certain departments and certain things like paving and other
Right.
stuff there. But, like you said, 2 to 3% for cost of living, stuff like that, that's what we typically do. But I think the thing that we've done in the last couple of years is we really emphasized on the idea that let the departments put forward their budget. For instance, when I was road commissioner, I didn't really get to do that. My budget was usually a flatline budget most every year. So it was kind of hard. It was easy to do a budget, but kind of hard to get anything done because, you weren't allowed to, you'd come in with a wish list, but you usually flatlined it, and we don't want to do that anymore. But we want, I believe that if you let the department head do their job, submit it, then let everybody go for it. Because I'd rather not see any pressures from this side or that side. Let them put down what they need. And that's what Saturday usually does for us.
thanks, thank you. Can I ask David another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
David, do you think that the COVID for the last 2 years and the relief money and stuff like that have influenced the budgets at all, or maybe even made it harder?
No,
in some cases?
I honestly believe that it actually made it easier. Because financially, I think, and it really sounds really dumb when I say that, but, town of Acton made out quite well financially because of it. I mean, it was almost $500,000 that, we got back from the school, so we were able to take that money. And it did make it a little bit more difficult on us, because when that money was being allocated back, we weren't sure if that was coming or not, so we had to allocate like it wasn't coming. But then when we did get assurance that it was coming, then we had to kind of scramble at the end and try to figure exactly how we wanted to do it. And, and we were coming up with some ideas. We talked to department heads, where do you need an increase? Absolute, we really need it. And then that's when we ended up putting some money aside for like the gym and stuff like that, because, and paying off some stuff, paying off, the sand shed, stuff like that. But I don't think COVID made it any harder. The only thing harder was the Zoom meetings.
David, do you think we're gonna have challenges now that money's going away in budgeting?
Well, what we did, because originally when we got that money, there was some ideas that, we were gonna increase, say the roads, we were gonna give more paving, and other accounts, we were gonna give more, and myself, I said, no, let's look at this. We're not gonna get this money next year. We don't wanna give this money and then not be able to give it to them again the year after, because we knew it would snowball us. So that's why we ended up doing what we did with paying off this, paying off that, put some reserve funds in, because we didn't want it to hurt us in the long run.
So you don't anticipate there being a problem then?
I believe we're in really good shape right now financially. Our designated funds really healthy, and by paying off the sand shed and the other loans that we paid off is only going to help us down the road, because those are stuff that we're not having to vote on at the June meeting again, because every year we'd have to put like $60,000 towards that sand shed. That's paid for, so that's $60,000 we can reallocate to another department without raising taxes. So it was kind of a long-term thing, and that's why we did what we did.
Thank you.
So what's the board's thoughts about what I said in the beginning? You want to leave things just how they are? Do you want to go with my idea, or what do you want to do? Completely up to you guys.
I definitely see your concern and the idea behind it as far as trying to have the joint meeting and stuff. I definitely have to think a little bit more about it before I'd make a vote on it tonight, to see if there are or would be any drawbacks as far as why they do it the way they do. I would certainly hope a longer Saturday meeting would allow us more time to ask the questions rather than being rushed if it is, you know, a 15-minute increment or whatnot. That's where I'm at with it.
How long does Saturday usually run?
It's usually about 9 to 12.
So it'd be easy to stay for a few hours longer if necessary.
Oh, fine with me, I'll do whatever anybody wants.
And we may be able to restructure a little bit where we might be able to do a couple department heads some night, you know, on a Wednesday night or something. Wednesday night, I mean, on Wednesday. We don't like spending Wednesday night as long as we have to.
You don't want to be here till 9 o'clock, huh?
Thursday night or Tuesday night, something like that, where we can, you know, we can discuss that, change it around a little bit, so that we don't burn a whole Saturday, which most people don't like to do. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't like, is usually it's the nicest day of the springtime when we're doing it. So, but I'm sure we can work something out where we may be able to break it up a little bit so we can extend the time, so you guys can ask more questions of them and us.
How much time is there between the Saturday meeting and when the decision is made? Is it made that, at the next selectman meeting, that Wednesday?
I don't have the paperwork from me, but it's not far off.
Yeah, it's not,
You have that list
I do, somewhere here. Give me a second here.
on my phone.
She gave it to us. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, the initial budgets are due January 31st, which is obviously about a month from now. Notice the potential ordinance articles due February 4th. Planning board public hearing is February 17th. Final ordinance articles due March 4th. Warrants to be delivered to the Warrant and Finance Committee, March 11th. And then that gives us, about 6 weeks, time frame to, come up with recommendations to give back to the Board of Selectmen. And then everything else is, Selectmen signed the warrant May the 11th. This is a schedule that Jennifer came up with the other night and the Selectmen approved. The thing is, you know, Tucker, in that time frame, usually starts in February, we deal with the school warrant articles. And we've tried to have our recommendations on them ready for the school board, their meeting, first meeting they have in March, which for some reason I'm thinking is the second Thursday or something like that. And as you might remember, Tucker, last year, because we don't vote on the school warrant until the school committee approves it. So, and it's just, the selectmen have done it two different ways. Sometimes we do it before and sometimes you do it afterwards, you know. Depends on the Board of Selectmen. So last year what we did was, for convenience for everybody, when the school committee got done voting on their warrant, we just switched places at the table, had our warrant finance meeting, and that way there they could move forward with the town clerk, Jennifer, to get their town meeting set up, which they like to have in April. And so you have that posting time and time frames and all that stuff, which I'm really not sure about, but so in this January, in February, we have the school stuff to go over and ask questions and so forth. So So we have two schedules that we really have to work about in this time frame, and we get kind of busy starting in January. And that's why, you know, I thought having these meetings was a good idea, because especially with the new committee, the only older members now, Tucker, you're a senior member now.
It's weird to think.
And we're obviously, we're gonna have two more new members, hopefully, in January. And so it's a pretty good learning curve for a lot of you, and I'd like to try as a chair to make it as simple and painless as possible.
Try harder.
I apologize, I should have spoken at the beginning of the meeting. There is a full moon tonight, so if everybody could just control their emotions and outbursts, it'd be muchly appreciated. So, what's your thoughts on it, Bernie? On us meeting prior to or during the budget development?
I guess you're talking about what we talked about earlier.
Earlier, yes, I'm sorry, we kind of...
Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand what you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Are you talking about asking to be a part of the meetings between the board and the department heads? Is that what you're asking me?
Requesting involvement, would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. I think a couple things based on what David relayed, that he thinks the board would look at extending the workshop to be longer so that there can be more questions, that maybe it's not necessary. And the other thing that occurred to me was if some or all of us attend those meetings and there are questions that remain after the meeting that we didn't get to ask for whatever reason, we could still submit the questions through the town administrator to the department head and ask a question. So, I mean, it seems to me that at least the spirit of what was communicated tonight is that it's likely the workshop time will be extended, there will be more time for questions and so forth, so I don't know if you're looking to vote tonight or you just want to get an idea.
I just wanted a straw vote.
Yeah, that's kind of
If people feel we ought to leave things the way they are, then we'll just leave things the way they are.
I think based on what I heard tonight, and again, my thought that we could still ask questions through the town administrator to the department heads, that I'm not sure we need to change it.
Joyce?
Well, I don't think that we need to go in 5 or 7 people to a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the department heads. I think that just adds confusion, and I hear one thing, you hear something else, and yet we're both hearing the same words are being said. I also agree that, you know, with, you know, David saying extending the time, you know, fine tuning, maybe not always on a Saturday, but fine tuning how this process goes about. You know, that's a really good thing, but perhaps if, sorry, Dennis, but as the chairman, if you could inquire if you could be invited to the, what I'm calling the one-on-one meeting, the board and the department head. That's the, you know, I mean, we are an advisory board, but in order to do our job as we have been elected to do, we have to know what we're doing. We need we need all the facts. And I think we're making great strides in that direction, but that's the way I think.
Did you already say, Leslie?
I'm sorry?
Did you already give your opinion?
Well, a couple things were said that made me think about it a little more. My concern is that we have all of the information that we need. You know, I've heard in the past that 15 minutes for each department sometimes wasn't enough. David did offer a suggestion, you know, that would help, that might help clarify that. And my only concern is that we have enough time to ask whatever questions we might have. So I can see it being beneficial if we have certain people that go to the workshops and then just sit and listen and develop questions to be submitted later. I mean, that could work.
Yeah, okay.
You know, that way it's not a bazillion people. Just, you know, and I know that once you have a lot of people, sometimes meetings get disrupted just by people sitting there. But, you know, there could be some good information that we might want to consider happening at those meetings. So I think, you know, having a presence of maybe one or two people at them would be beneficial, just to sit and take notes and think about whether there's anything else that we need, rather than bringing the department heads in another time to go over the same thing.
Fine with that. What do you think, Joe? Same thing?
I think that in the past, the time frame of presenting the budget to the finance committee sometimes had been rushed.
Yeah.
And I felt that in coming to some of the meetings and just listening, there wasn't enough time to get all the members together in everybody's schedule, especially in the spring. And sometimes the meetings became hasty in the sense that, well, we gotta get this done. Everybody was in the paper, you got like so many days to the town meeting, it's gotta be done, you gotta make a decision. And you know, and I disclose, most people, when they spend money, they think about it. And it's not like a rash thing. We're dealing with millions of dollars here, we're not dealing with 25 cents. So I think that the more time and the more exposure we have to the expenditures, it gives us a better insight as to what we're doing and where the town should move forward to.
Yeah. So I guess the opinion is, and David, you addressed this with the board, that try to extend the time on meeting with the department heads and stuff of the Warrant and Finance Committee, so that there is more time.
Well, obviously, the only way without changing the schedule that we've already approved, without just extending on Saturday, we may have to move a couple things around if we're gonna say do a couple nights.
Yeah.
So it might have to be a small change in that.
Whatever works.
It makes sense.
Whatever works for the board.
And I think at the end of the day, it might work better instead of doing what was recommended. But we just don't want to overload the department head. And I think that's one thing that we're trying not to do. So we'll ease into it, and if we can get that forward, we get some more time, I think we'd be doing well.
So with that being said, yes, I will go to the workshops. Bernie, were you the liaison to the town hall also?
I think I am.
So if you can make it, it would be you and me.
Right.
Tom was the liaison to the town hall. So I'll step up and do that. And I will also step up with you, Bernie, being the liaison to the school. and I'll notify the superintendent of these changes, so that they should be doing their schedule pretty soon anyway, I believe.
Okay.
So does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Sorry, people, I lost my agenda. I would like to congratulate, I'm disappointed and I'm happy. I'm disappointed that we lost Tom as a Warrant and Finance Committee member, but I'm also grateful for him being willing to step up his role as a selectman. And I think it's going to be a very good working relationship between new selectmen and hopefully all the selectmen, but especially the new selectmen and the different committees like ours. And I also would like to thank the Board of Selectmen, while I'm just rambling on here, for reconsidering the filming of our meeting. I really appreciate them doing that. As we know, we'll advertise it here too. If anybody's interested in watching the meetings, we are looking for 2 new members for the Warrant and Finance Committee. I know there's been at least 2 that has stepped up and inquired about it. So that's a good thing. The more the minds, the merrier. And some people need to tell me when I need to stop talking. Okay, Bernie? No, you need to. People need to tell me to stop.
That's it.
The other thing that this is going to be new for the committee, and we'll talk to Michelle about this, I guess. We have in our warrant a lot of organizations that ask us for money. The advantage the board's had the last few years is there's been members that have been on the board for quite a while, and they have a pretty good understanding of what these services are and what they do. Before, we used to have these services come and give a presentation to the Warrant and Finance Committee and answer questions before we gave recommendations on them, because these are private organizations. And the only role that the Board of Selectmen have in this is if they decide that some organization isn't legit or whatever, so they don't pass that on to us. It's quite a bit of money, and there's quite a few organizations, and it's too much for the Board of Selectmen or Jennifer to understand and, for lack of better words, defend these requests. So that might add to our meeting time, say in March. It's just something I want to put out there to think about. I forget how many different ones there are, but there's quite a few, a dozen and a half anyway, I think. And just something for everybody to think about. Look in the warrant, see what we was put forward last year. And you might say you don't have any questions about any of it, and then it's a dead issue. But if you do, it's just something to think about that we can decide in the next couple of meetings that we might want to look at. Is there any other discussion that anybody wants to bring up?
I was going to ask a question of you. That's something that has kind of the language that we use when we're doing our recommendations.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring it up before we got to that point. And this one actually, I pulled out last year's warrant. And this one, it does actually have to do with one of the services.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say who it is, but Board of Selectmen recommends article approve as written. Warrant and Finance Committee recommends not to pass. What is ought not to pass?
No vote. It's a no vote.
It's a no vote, I realize that, but, I mean, I literally I've heard people say, well, why don't they just say, you know, like, no, you know, why do they ought not pass?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Does it go back to olden times or something? I don't know.
Just like it's illegal to trot a horse across a bridge still.
All I can say about that is, unless the town administrator comes up with some other reason, is that she asked, and she's right, that all motions be consistent wording.
Well, I would say ought not passed anywhere, ought to just say don't pass or something.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's...
I mean, Jennifer knows how to write a warrant, so if that's what it is, that's what it is.
Before we make our recommendations this year, I'll check with Jennifer and maybe there's a reason for that's why the way it's worded, and maybe it isn't. I'm not sure.
I was just curious. I mean, if it's legalese.
I got no idea.
I don't know.
It's awkward. That's what I think. It's awkward.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's all I had to ask you.
I mean,
You don't have to answer now. I mean, you know.
I'll have this conversation with
Yeah.
Jennifer.
Well, she'll know.
You know, the only thing that comes to mind for me is that sometimes, this isn't particular to a warrant necessarily, but kind of the no means yes and yes means no. It depends how a question is worded.
Yeah.
And so that might be why. But, I mean, I agree with you, it comes down to no if you don't want something to pass.
Right.
But sometimes no means...
yes.
So that's why, I wonder if that's where that originated, that's all.
Could have been where it originated. Thank you.
Yeah.
When the time comes, we'll make sure our terminology is satisfactory to everybody.
So...
Anybody else with anything? Go ahead, Joyce. You have something else?
No.
Oh,
No.
sorry.
No.
Everybody's all set?
I just have one, this isn't, just looking quickly tonight at the audited financial statements, it appears to me that the town has a significant surplus.
Yes.
And that we also carry debt that we're paying interest on, and I'm wondering if something, you know, maybe we should have some discussions. I don't know if that's something that can be put out to the voters. Certainly if that were my personal budget, if I had a lot of money in the bank and I was carrying debt with interest, I'd pay off the debt and get rid of the interest. I don't know if that's possible,
It
or
is.
if there's a reason, but just something that I think we ought to consider.
That's what we started doing last year.
Yeah.
Great.
Starting with Ghost Cove Farm, I think we're Go Hill, we were already on it last year, I believe on that one. The sand shed we paid off early.
Yep.
And what we're gonna be doing this year, I'm sure like we do every year, is we'll be looking at our general surplus. Michelle gives us a number that we need, the state recommends, that we keep in that general surplus. And because we paid off so much stuff in the last year, that, yeah, there is some debts there, fire trucks and stuff like that, there that, if we can pay down early, which would always be beneficial, especially when, you know they're gonna be asking for another one someday, So, that was big on, that was a suggestion that I came up with last year when I came with that 500,000, with some debt paid off. And we want to continue paying debt off. I know everybody says, oh, it's always cheap interest, 1%, whatever it is, but still at the same time, it's still a percentage. If we have the money. What we did last year is, we could have dropped the tax rate quite a bit last year, and we decided that wasn't a good thing. It kind of sounds silly, but it's not a good thing, because what happens is it's a shock value. We could have taken that $500,000, dropped the mill rate 10, 15 cents, or even 25, and but the problem is, we would have to made that up next year, and then probably more than that. 40-cent increase in your mill rate, that's a shock value. So what we try to do is we try to keep that mill rate within a few cents, and we actually lowered the mill rate this year, and we really didn't want it. We wanted to keep it the same so that we could just, because you never want to fluctuate your mill rate back and forth. It just doesn't look right. And but if we can look at a general surplus and we're able to pay some stuff off, yeah, we'll do that. Plus, I do believe there's some other monies that might be coming that might make some sort of impact. So when that comes through, obviously we don't count on those until we know it's coming. But this budget season is always interesting, because there's always a wrench in it somewhere.
Thank you. And you're right, Bernie, the last few years, the undesignated fund balance has increased by about $300,000 a year, for many reasons. One is the new tax revenue with all the building and stuff that's going on in town. Obviously from the land use department, money increases in that department with all the building. Those are probably the two biggest reasons. But now we're up to approximately $3 million, which I guess, like David said, we need to look at what we're doing with the money. Do we take some of this money and leave everything the same, and take some of this money and work on our infrastructure a little bit more aggressively, or what we do with it? And this is one of the reasons that I wanted to have this meeting with everybody, so that we could have this conversation, but we will do it at our budget time when we do it.
I think it's sort of what David had said, you paid off the salt shed and other things, and because we don't know, we can't see in the future, and this is maybe, would I be right in thinking it's one of the first times recently we've been able to pay off some major debt?
Yeah. I remember back in 2010, and so we actually granted loans, pay bills.
Yeah.
We're not in that mode right now.
No.
If we feel maybe a little too secure, we may be banking a little bit too much money. That's why when we get the recommendation, because the state usually recommends you leave so many months worth.
Right, yeah.
I'm not saying how many months.
I believe it's 3.
But when we get that recommendation, and adjust right, between codes, revaluations and stuff like that, we do have a reval that we're talking about doing.
Right.
And, but there's one other aspect that, we're really having a hard time with right now, and I think it's gonna impact us. In the long run, it's gonna impact us huge, and this is me not speaking for the other selectmen, but the hiring processes and stuff in the town of Acton, the amount of money that's taken now to keep employees and stuff, I think that's gonna be a big impact on our budgets here in the next few years, just trying to be competitive. And I think you'll see some large
large increases in wages. And like Dennis says, some places maybe a little under, but we've got to start staying with the average. And unfortunately, right now, it's hard. We don't even know what the average is. It's so jumping around so much right now. And it's crazy. We can't compete with Dunkin' Donuts right now. They're getting $18 an hour. It's like coffee's out the window, and we got people working here for less than that. So we're gonna have a real challenge on our hands pretty soon here, trying to figure out how to make these wages, comparable, and keep people here.
Well, like you said, we don't see the future, so we better go slow and steady.
That's right.
Well, and the other thing too about, again, I support paying down our debt, but also I think a prudent reserve is really important.
You have to have that.
Because also, if we need money in the future, it may be a lot more expensive to borrow than it is currently. So hopefully we want to reduce the likelihood and necessity of borrowing, so.
Some of you may be too young. I worked in a bank when prime rate was 18%. If you wanted to borrow money.
Yep.
And you could have been a corporation, and it could have been 18 plus 2. For,
Yep.
it was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous to think of that. But anyway, that's not our problem to fix right now.
Or create.
Or create.
Do we want another meeting in January?
Yeah, I say. Do you think January is when, you got your sheet up, mine's on my phone, the dates, when is school department?
I don't have that.
You have, oh, you don't have the schools?
No, I don't have the school yet.
Is this initial request due all departments Monday, January 31st?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the
That's not-
schools.
That's different, yeah, okay.
I mean, do you want to wait until February, January, whatever the board wants to do? I'm fine with it. Oh, I am fine with it, but I also would like the selectmen to appoint new members to have a workshop previous to just bombarding them all with the budget.
And we need
you
a
know what I mean?
January meeting.
Good idea.
To have the 2 new members, and we,
I don't believe we're gonna be filling those 2 spots until first or second week of January anyways.
Yes.
So, I believe we voted on it.
yeah, because of Christmas and everything.
January 5th, I think, was the
Fourth
date.
of, yeah,
It was after the holidays.
Right.
We make sure that people can get their main in between the
Why
holidays.
don't we do it towards the end of the month, and if we cancel, we can cancel. If we don't,
The end of January.
yeah.
It's fine with me. Whatever you guys want to do.
Fine.
Would you guys think if we did it at the end of January, and if we have, if 2 new members have been appointed, great. If they haven't, we can cancel till February,
That's fine.
with enough time.
Yep.
We won't cancel the day before, we'll certainly give enough time. But it would be nice, because I know how I feel as a new person.
Yeah.
And to have 2 new people on.
Answer any questions before we jump head first into
Yeah.
budget season.
Exactly.
Kind of like having conversations like we've been having.
Yeah, all right. So I'm looking at here,
As long as it's on a Monday.
I'm looking at the Mondays. 24th, yeah.
You're thinking?
Yeah,
Does that work all right with everybody? January 24th?
Yes, thank you.
I don't think we need to vote on that. We'll just do it, and again, if anybody has any questions about anything, feel free to email me, and I'll pass them on to the town administrator, and if you have anything you want to come up with for information by then, hopefully we'll get it.
So the next meeting, it will be 1/24/22.
Is there anything else that the committee has?
Anything from
No.
the,
You all set, Joe?
All set.
Leslie?
I'm all set, yeah.
yep,
Can I have a motion? Oh, sorry, Brent.
Motion to
Thank you.
second.
All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.